Omens.
Chapter 1. Peaceful Beginning. A new beginning. The Bell family's move. The sun dipped below the horizon as the Bell family's carriage rumbled along the dusty path towards Adams. John Bell, a man of sturdy resolve, glanced at his family, feeling a mix of hope and anxiety. Beside him, his wife Lucy smiled wearily, clutching their young daughter's hand. The move, spurred by John's ambition for a fresh start, promised a life far from their tumultuous past. As they neared their new home, the children's eyes grew wide with wonder. The house, an imposing structure against the twilight sky, stood surrounded by vast fields and dense woods. "It's bigger than I imagined," whispered Betsy, her voice tinged with excitement. John felt a surge of pride. He had dreamed of this moment, owning land, a place they could call their own. Yet, as they unloaded their belongings, an inexplicable sense of unease settled over him. The house, with its creaking floors and groaning walls, seemed to whisper secrets of its own. Night fell, and the family gathered for their first meal in the new house. Laughter and chatter filled the air, a stark contrast to the silent, watchful woods outside. As they retired to bed, John reassured himself, believing the unease was just the novelty of the new environment. But as he drifted to sleep, a faint whisper crept through the cracks in the walls, barely audible yet chilling to the bone. The Bell Witch, though unseen, had begun weaving her dark tapestry into the fabric of their lives. The little village of Adams. The village of Adams lay nestled in a quiet valley, surrounded by the rolling hills of Tennessee. It was a small community where everyone knew each other, and secrets didn't stay hidden for long. To the Bell family, it seemed like the perfect place to start anew, far from the bustling city life they had known. John Bell, the family patriarch, quickly became acquainted with the local townsfolk. They were warm and welcoming, sharing stories and offering help. However, as John wandered through the village, he noticed an air of caution in their greetings, a hesitancy in their eyes. One evening, at the local tavern, John overheard hushed conversations about a long-forgotten legend, something about a witch that once haunted the area. He dismissed it as local folklore, an amusing tale to scare children. The village itself was picturesque, with its quaint houses and cobblestone streets. The Bell children, Betsy and John Jr., roamed freely, enchanted by the lush green fields and the nearby woods, which whispered with the sounds of nature. However, there was a part of the village that seemed out of place. An old, abandoned chapel stood at the edge of the town, its windows broken and doors creaking in the wind. It was a stark reminder of the passage of time and the secrets that lay buried in the village's past. As days passed, the Bells settled into their new life. But beneath the surface of this seemingly peaceful village, a shadow lurked, a whisper from the past waiting to be awakened. Chapter 2. Ominous Omens. Strange sounds. The stillness of the Adams night was something the Bell family had come to appreciate. However, one particular night, this tranquility was broken by an unfamiliar sound. It started as a faint tapping, almost rhythmic, against the walls of their home. John Bell, initially dismissing it as the work of mischievous animals, found his skepticism wavering as the tapping persisted night after night. The sound seemed to move, encircling their house, tapping at windows and doors, an uninvited guest playing a sinister game. Betsy, the youngest, was the first to express her fear. "It sounds like fingers drumming," she whispered one evening, her eyes wide with fright. Her words sent a chill through the room, and Lucy, her mother, drew her close, offering comfort but feeling unease herself. The sounds evolved over time. Whisperings and soft murmurings joined the tapping, as if a crowd of unseen entities were conversing just beyond the walls. Some nights, it was almost melodic, luring the family into a restless unease. John Jr. tried to rationalize it, suggesting wind or settling foundations, but the explanations fell flat in the face of the inexplicable chorus that filled their nights. One stormy night, the sounds reached a crescendo. The tapping turned into a pounding, the whispers into wails, as if the storm itself had given voice to something ancient and malevolent. The family huddled together, feeling a terror they could not understand nor escape. It was then that John Bell realized this was no ordinary occurrence. Something unnatural was at play, something that defied explanation. The sounds of the night had become a harbinger of darker things to come. First meeting. Invisible being. The unexplained sounds had unsettled the Bell family, but what occurred next marked a chilling escalation. One evening, as twilight fell, Betsy felt an inexplicable coldness envelop her. She was in the garden, and the air around her seemed to shiver with an unseen presence. She tried to shrug off the feeling, attributing it to the dropping temperature. But then, she felt it, a gentle yet unmistakable touch on her shoulder. Spinning around, she found nothing but the empty air. Her heart raced. Her cries brought the family running. John Bell searched the garden, finding no intruder. Yet, the look of genuine terror on Betsy's face was undeniable. She spoke of feeling a hand, yet no one was there. The incident left the family rattled, their sense of security shattered. Nightfall brought a palpable tension. Whispers and taps were now accompanied by fleeting shadows and the sensation of being watched. Lucy Bell, usually the pillar of strength, admitted to feeling a presence, a weight in the air, as if they were sharing their home with something unseen. John Jr., brave and curious, ventured into the night, determined to confront whatever haunted them. He returned pale and shaken, speaking of a voice in the wind, calling out, echoing their names. The invisible being was no longer just a source of fear. It had become a constant, unsettling companion. The Bells were no longer alone in their home, and the realization that they were living with an unseen entity filled them with a dread that clung to their every step. Chapter 3. Mysterious Incidents. Noise in the night. The nights in Adams had grown longer and more oppressive. The once comforting silence of the countryside was now punctuated by unsettling disturbances. The Bell family lay in their beds, sleep eluding them, as the sounds outside grew increasingly bizarre. It began with a distant, mournful howling that seemed neither human nor animal. The sound twisted and turned through the night air, wrapping the house in a cloak of dread. John Bell, lying awake, felt a sense of foreboding he couldn't shake off. Lucy, usually dismissive of superstitions, found herself whispering prayers under her breath. The children, Betsy and John Jr., huddled together, wide-eyed and trembling. The howling was joined by a cacophony of knocks and bangs, as if the house itself was protesting their presence. One night, the noise escalated into a frenzy. It sounded as though a multitude of feet were stamping on the ground outside, encircling the house in a ritualistic dance. The family, gripped by fear, dared not look out the windows. The following morning, John Bell ventured outside, expecting signs of a nocturnal trespasser, but found nothing. No footprints, no evidence of any disturbance. The land lay undisturbed, belying the terror of the night. This pattern of nightly disturbances grew in intensity, each incident more alarming than the last. It was as if the darkness had come alive, feeding off their fear. The family, once skeptical, now found themselves believing in the inconceivable, that they were not alone, and something unworldly was making its presence known. Invisible Hand. The eerie occurrences in the Bell household escalated beyond auditory hauntings to physical manifestations. It was a chilly evening when Betsy first felt the cold, invisible hand. She was in her room, the candle flickering as a draft swept through, or so she thought. As she reached for her shawl, she felt a distinct pressure on her back, like a hand gently pressing. She spun around, her heart pounding, but no one was there. Terrified, she screamed, her voice echoing through the house. Her family rushed to her side, finding her pale and distraught. She stammered about an unseen force, a hand that had touched her yet left no trace. John Bell, though skeptical, couldn't ignore the fear in his daughter's eyes. The incidents grew more frequent. Lucy Bell felt her hair being tugged while cooking in the kitchen. John Jr. experienced a sudden push while walking down the hallway. Each encounter left them shaken, their home no longer a sanctuary, but a playground for an unseen entity. Whispers circulated in the town about the Bells' plight, fueling rumors of witchcraft and curses. The family, once welcomed, found themselves isolated, the subject of fearful glances and hushed conversations. The invisible hand was no mere child's play. It was malevolent, toying with them, stripping away their sense of safety and normalcy. The Bell family realized they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding, a force that defied the laws of nature and reason. Chapter 4. Family Fear. Anxious daily life. The Bell family's home, once a haven of warmth and laughter, had transformed into a den of unease. Each day was shadowed by the anticipation of nightfall, the coming of unseen horrors. John Bell, a man of firm resolve, found his demeanor fraying as he struggled to maintain normalcy. Lucy's once melodious voice turned to whispers, often found clutching her rosary, her eyes betraying a constant vigil. The children, Betsy and John Jr., moved with a cautious step, their playfulness replaced by a silence that echoed the family's growing dread.
Mealtimes, once a period of family bonding, now became quick, silent affairs. Conversations were stilted, often punctuated by pauses as each member listened for the slightest unusual sound, the next sign of their invisible tormentor. Even the simplest household chores were fraught with anxiety. The creaking of floorboards, the rustling of leaves outside. Every little sound was a potential herald of another encounter. Sleep became elusive, filled with nightmares when it did come.
The strain was visible on John Bell's face as he tried to reassure his family, to protect them from the fear that gripped their home. But the uncertainty of what they were dealing with, the inability to see or understand their adversary, left him feeling powerless. Their home, nestled in the tranquil countryside, had become a stage for an unseen entity's malevolent performance, turning their daily life into a constant state of apprehension and fear. Increasing threat. The disturbances at the Bell residence had grown from eerie whispers to terrifying physical encounters. Each event seemed more aggressive, more threatening than the last. The family's fear escalated as the unseen presence made itself known with increasing hostility. Betsy was the most affected. One evening, as she lay in bed, she felt a sudden, forceful tug at her hair. She screamed, finding clumps of her hair on the pillow, yet no one was there. Her cries echoed through the house, bringing everyone to her room, their faces etched with horror. John Bell, desperate for answers, consulted local clergy and wise folks, but their advice brought no respite. Amulets and prayers seemed futile against the malevolent force that had invaded their home. The entity began to manifest more boldly. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed shut without a breeze. The family would often find their belongings strewn about as if played with by an invisible hand.
The nights were the worst. The sounds grew louder, more aggressive. Bangs on the walls, heavy footsteps in the hallway, and a constant, oppressive feeling of being watched haunted their every moment. Lucy, once the source of comfort, grew pale and withdrawn, her eyes always searching the shadows. John Jr., trying to be brave, kept a vigilant watch at night, but the dark hours took their toll on him.
Their once peaceful home had become a battleground, where an unseen entity waged psychological warfare against the Bell family. The threat that had started as an unsettling curiosity was now a tangible terror. A presence that suffocated their lives with fear. Chapter 5. The beginning of the curse. Isolated family. As the supernatural occurrences intensified, so did the Bell family's isolation. Word of their plight spread through atoms, turning curiosity into wariness. Neighbors who once greeted them warmly now crossed the street to avoid them. Whispers of witchcraft and dark forces swirled around the family, casting them in a shroud of suspicion and fear. The isolation wasn't just social. It was palpable within their home. The entity, now a constant unseen presence, seemed to erect invisible walls around them, cutting them off from the world. John Bell felt this most acutely. His once robust voice of authority diminished to a hushed, weary tone. Lucy tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, but her efforts were dampened by the ever-present dread that hung over their home like a thick fog. The children, once buoyant and full of life, grew quiet, their laughter replaced by a silence that was as heavy as it was heartbreaking. The family's evenings, which were once filled with shared stories and laughter, now passed in uneasy silence. Each member lost in their thoughts, their gazes often drifting to the empty corners of the room, as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows.
Even the sanctuary of sleep eluded them. Their nights were restless, filled with unsettling dreams that blurred the lines between reality and nightmare. The entity's influence permeated their very being, leaving them exhausted and on edge. In this state of isolation, the Bells faced not just the terror of the unknown entity, but the equally damaging force of loneliness. The curse had not only unleashed a supernatural terror upon them, but had also severed the ties that connected them to their community, leaving them to face their fears alone.
The identity of the Bell Witch. The relentless haunting forced John Bell to seek answers about the identity of the unseen tormentor. Local lore and whispered tales led him to a chilling conclusion. They were dealing with the Bell Witch, a specter steeped in the area's dark history. Legend had it that the witch was once a woman of the town, ostracized and accused of witchcraft. On her deathbed, she uttered a curse upon those who wronged her. Many dismissed the story as a mere fable, but the Bells couldn't ignore the parallels with their own experiences. John delved deeper into the town's archives, unearthing old documents and testimonies about the witch. Accounts of strange occurrences, unexplained illnesses, and sudden deaths filled the pages, painting a picture of a vengeful spirit haunting the area for generations. As he pieced together the story, the entity's actions took on a new meaning. The witch's presence in their home was not random, it was personal. The curse, it seemed, was tied to the Bell family in ways they couldn't fathom. Lucy, grappling with fear and skepticism, struggled to accept the supernatural explanation. Yet each unexplainable event, each eerie encounter, chipped away at her disbelief. The revelation brought a new dimension to their fear. They were not just facing a ghost, but a wrathful spirit with a history, a purpose. This knowledge did not bring comfort, but rather a deeper sense of dread. The Bell Witch was not a mere tale. She was a reality, a malevolent force that had woven itself into the very fabric of their lives. Chapter 6. Hidden Past. The Secret of the Town. In his quest to understand the haunting, John Bell delved into the hidden past of Adams. The townsfolk, once friendly and open, now turned evasive. Their eyes darted away when he mentioned the witch, their words careful and measured. One misty evening, John met an elderly man known as Old Thomas, who had lived in Adams his entire life. Thomas, with a wary glance around, beckoned John to a secluded spot near the old chapel. "The witch you speak of, she's real," he whispered, his voice trembling. "This town has a history, buried deep, secrets that aren't meant to be unearthed." Thomas recounted tales passed down through generations, stories of strange rituals, unexplained disappearances, and a pact made with dark forces long ago. The witch, it was said, was part of that forgotten history, a vengeful spirit tied to the town's hidden sins. John listened, a chill running down his spine. The stories painted a picture of a town entangled in the supernatural, its history steeped in darkness. The chapel, now abandoned, was once a gathering place for those who practiced forbidden arts. As John walked back through the silent streets, the town seemed to hold a new, ominous character. The quaint houses and peaceful fields now appeared as facades, hiding a grim truth beneath. This revelation made the Bells' plight even more harrowing. It wasn't just their family that was cursed, it was the town itself. The witch was not just a vengeful spirit, she was a reminder of a pact that had bound Adams to a dark fate. Shadows of the past. The revelations from old Thomas had stirred something within John Bell. He couldn't shake off the feeling that the past was reaching out, its shadows stretching into their present. Compelled by a mix of fear and determination, John began a more in-depth investigation into the town's archives. The deeper he delved, the more the shadows of the past began to take shape. He discovered old land deeds, cryptic journal entries, and faded letters that hinted at a pact with something otherworldly. These documents, while cryptic, painted a vivid picture of a community entangled in occult practices. One yellowed letter, in particular, caught John's attention. Written by a town elder decades ago, it spoke of a necessary evil to protect the town, and of a guardian spirit that would exact a heavy price. The language was veiled, but the implications were clear. This discovery sent a shiver down John's spine. The Bell Witch, it seemed, was more than a vengeful spirit. She was a sentinel, bound to the town, a guardian of a dark secret that the townsfolk had buried. As he pondered over these findings, John realized that his family's arrival might have stirred the dormant forces of the past. They had unwittingly become part of a centuries-old story, actors in a drama written long before their arrival. That night, as he lay in bed, John heard the whispers again. But this time, they carried a different tone. It was as if the house, the town, the very land they lived on, was whispering its dark, ancient secrets. Secrets that the Bell family was now inextricably a part of. Chapter 7. Confronting the Truth. The cause of the curse. The Bell family, once oblivious to the darkness lurking beneath Adams, now faced a harrowing truth. John's relentless search through the town's hidden past had led him to a disturbing revelation. The curse that plagued their family was deeply intertwined with the town's forgotten sins. In the dusty attic of the old chapel, John found a tattered diary belonging to the supposed witch. The pages were filled with anguished words, cursing those who had wronged her. It was a heart-wrenching tale of betrayal and injustice, ending with a chilling vow of vengeance upon the descendants of those who had condemned her. John realized with horror that his ancestors were among those named in the diary. The curse wasn't arbitrary, it was targeted. His family, by mere bloodline, had become the focus of the witch's century-old wrath.
The diary detailed rituals and incantations, suggesting that the witch had dabbled in dark arts, seeking retribution in death. Her spirit, it seemed, had been bound to the land, forever tied to the town and her curse.
As John shared these findings with his family, the weight of their predicament sank in. They weren't just battling a ghost. They were up against a legacy of injustice that had festered into a malevolent force. That night, the family felt a palpable change in the air. The usual noises and whispers were absent. Instead, there was a heavy silence, as if the house itself was holding its breath. They sensed the witch's awareness of their discovery, her presence more pronounced and menacing. The curse's origin had been uncovered, but with this knowledge came a deeper fear. The Bell family now understood the gravity of their situation. They were caught in a vengeful spirit's relentless pursuit of retribution. a curse born from the ashes of a tormented past.
Hidden stories.
After uncovering the harrowing origin of the curse, John Bell was drawn deeper into the web of the town's hidden stories. Among the dusty archives, he found a collection of old letters and diaries, some dating back centuries. These documents held fragmented tales of other families afflicted by similar curses, their fates sealed by the witch's vengeance. One particular story stood out, that of a family who, decades ago, had suffered inexplicable tragedies. Like the Bells, they had been newcomers, unaware of the town's dark pact. Their demise was sudden and horrific, marked by unexplainable accidents and mysterious illnesses. As John pored over these accounts, a pattern emerged. The witch's wrath was not random. It targeted specific families, those tied to her persecution. The realization sent a chill down John's spine. His family was part of a tragic cycle, a repetition of history. Lucy, reading over her husband's shoulder, felt a sense of dread. The history of Adams was more sinister than they had ever imagined. The town, with its picturesque facade, hid a legacy of darkness and retribution. These hidden stories brought a new perspective to their plight. The Bells were not alone in their suffering. They were the latest victims of a centuries-old vendetta, a dark chapter in the town's history that refused to be closed. That night, the family huddled together, feeling the weight of the past pressing in on them. The air was thick with the unsaid, the house groaning under the burden of its hidden truths. They knew now that their fight was not just with a ghost, but with the echoes of a long-forgotten injustice that had left a permanent scar on the town of Adams. Chapter 8. Families Collapse. Tragic Incident. The Bell family's ordeal reached a horrifying climax. One stormy night, the wind howled outside, mirroring the turmoil within their home. It was on this night that the witch's presence became terrifyingly tangible. As they gathered in the living room, trying to find solace in each other's company, an oppressive silence enveloped the house. Suddenly, the air turned icy cold, and a sense of dread filled the room. The candles flickered violently, as if reacting to an unseen force. Without warning, a loud crash resonated from the kitchen. John, armed with nothing but his resolve, rushed towards the sound. The sight that greeted him was petrifying. Kitchen utensils were suspended in midair, as if held by invisible hands before being violently hurled across the room. The family screamed as a wave of unseen energy swept through the house, doors slamming shut, windows shattering. Betsy, paralyzed with fear, witnessed her own drawings being torn from the walls by unseen forces. In the midst of the chaos, Lucy was struck down by an invisible blow. She lay motionless on the ground, her face contorted in pain. John and the children rushed to her aid, but their efforts were hindered by more unseen attacks. This night marked the physical manifestation of the witch's wrath in its most violent form. The family, once hopeful of overcoming their haunting, now found themselves in the grip of an unrelenting terror. As the storm outside raged, so did the witch's fury, leaving the Bells helpless in the face of her vengeful onslaught. This tragic incident shattered the last remnants of their hope, leaving them to wonder if they would ever find peace again. Families' division. In the aftermath of the night's terror, the Bell family found themselves frayed at the edges, their unity crumbling under the weight of fear. The once strong bond that held them together was now strained, each member grappling with their own despair. John, feeling responsible for their plight, became withdrawn. His attempts to protect his family seemed futile against the witch's relentless attacks. Guilt weighed heavily on him, his once confident demeanor replaced by a shadow of doubt and helplessness. Lucy, traumatized by her encounter, lay in bed, her spirit broken. The vibrant woman who had been the heart of the family was now a shell, her eyes reflecting a deep-seated fear that words couldn't describe. Betsy, once full of life and curiosity, became sullen and distant. The events had taken a toll on her youthful innocence, leaving her anxious and withdrawn. The playful laughter that once filled the house was now a distant memory. John Jr., overwhelmed by the situation, struggled to cope with the reality that had shattered their lives. He oscillated between anger and despair, unable to comprehend the unjust curse that had befallen his family. The family's daily interactions became a series of silent meals and sleepless nights. Conversations, once filled with plans and dreams, were now sparse, their words hollow and devoid of hope. As the witch's presence continued to haunt them, it was not just the physical attacks that tormented the family. It was the emotional and psychological toll, the unspoken realization that their familial bond was fracturing under the pressure of an unseen enemy. This division within the family was perhaps the most tragic consequence of the witch's curse. In their most vulnerable moments, they found themselves isolated, each member lost in their own battle with fear and despair. Chapter 9. The Final Confrontation. The last battle with the Bell Witch. The night had fallen when John Bell, driven by desperation, decided it was time to confront the witch. The family, weary and broken, gathered in the living room, forming a circle of trembling hands and tear-streaked faces. As the clock struck midnight, the familiar chill permeated the air, but tonight there was a sense of finality. John, holding an old locket that once belonged to the witch, began to recite a prayer, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped his heart.
The house began to shudder, the air thickening with an otherworldly energy. Shadows danced along the walls, forming menacing shapes. A deafening silence enveloped them, broken only by Lucy's whispered sobs. Then, the witch materialized before them, her spectral form more terrifying than any of them had imagined. Her eyes, empty and cold, bore into John's, a silent challenge laid before him.
John continued his prayer, his words growing louder, more forceful. The witch, undeterred, began to circle the family, her form blurring into a whirlwind of darkness. Objects in the room levitated, swirling around the witch as she drew upon her malevolent powers. The family clung to each other, their fear palpable. Betsy, her voice trembling, joined her father in prayer, her words cutting through the chaos.
In a final act of defiance, John threw the locket towards the witch. A blinding light erupted, engulfing the room. The witch let out an ear-piercing shriek, as she dissolved into the light, her curse lifting as quickly as it had descended all those years ago. Exhausted and shaken, the Bell family collapsed. The weight of the witch's presence finally lifted from their home. The night was still. The terror that had haunted them had ended, but they knew their lives would never be the same. The key to resolution. In the heart of the storm, as the Bell witch's shriek faded, a profound silence fell over the Bell home. The family, battered but resilient, found themselves in a surreal calm. John, his heart pounding, realized that the key to their salvation had been the witch's own locket, a token of her once human existence. The locket, now lying on the floor, glowed faintly. John picked it up, feeling a surge of energy pulsing through it. It was as if the locket contained the remnants of the witch's soul, a soul tormented and twisted by betrayal and vengeance. Lucy, regaining her composure, approached John. Together, they examined the locket, noticing an inscription on the back. It was a name, the witch's real name, lost to history until now. Whispering her name, they felt a connection to the spirit that had tormented them, an understanding of her pain and fury. With the revelation of her name, the witch's story unfolded before them like a tragic play. They saw visions of her life, her suffering, and her untimely death at the hands of those she trusted. It was a story of a woman wronged, her life cut short by fear and superstition. The family realized that acknowledging her humanity was the key to breaking the curse. It wasn't just about fighting a ghost. It was about healing a broken soul. With newfound resolve, they spoke her name, offering forgiveness and release. As they did, the house lit up with a soft, warm light. The oppressive energy that had haunted them dissipated, replaced by a feeling of peace. The witch's spirit, finally acknowledged and understood, was free to move on. The Bell family, though forever changed by their ordeal, had found the key to their freedom, not in confrontation, but in compassion and understanding. The curse was lifted, not by force, but by empathy, a powerful reminder of the enduring strength of the human spirit. Chapter 10: The End of the Curse and a New Beginning. Lifting of the Curse. As dawn broke, the Bell family emerged from their home, their faces reflecting a mixture of relief and disbelief. The night's events seemed almost unreal, but the light of day brought a sense of closure and hope. The air around their home felt different, lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. The sun shone brighter, the birds sang louder, and for the first time in months, the family felt at peace. John stood in the garden, the locket in his hand. He looked at his family, realizing the ordeal they had endured had brought them closer together. They had faced unimaginable terror, but in the end, they found strength in their unity and compassion.
Lucy, with a gentle smile, joined John. They knew the witch's story would forever be a part of their lives, but now it was a tale of redemption, not of fear. The curse that had haunted their family and the town of Adams was finally broken. Betsy and John Jr. played in the yard, their laughter a symbol of their regained innocence. The horrors of the past were behind them, leaving lessons of understanding and resilience. The townspeople, who had once shunned them,
now approached with a newfound respect and empathy. The Bell family's ordeal had exposed the dark past of Adams, but it had also paved the way for healing and forgiveness.
As the family stood together, watching the sunrise, they felt a new chapter beginning. The curse was not only lifted from their home, but also from their hearts. They had survived the darkness, and in its place, they found a renewed spirit and a stronger bond. This day marked not just the end of the curse, but the start of a new journey for the Bell family. A journey of hope, rebuilding, and newfound understanding in the light of a new day. Peace in the town. As the sun rose high over Adams, a palpable sense of peace settled upon the town. The dark cloud that had hung over it for so long seemed to have dissipated, leaving a clear, bright sky. The townspeople, who had once whispered in fear and suspicion, now gathered in the town square, a sense of community reborn. The story of the Bell Witch and the bravery of the Bell family had spread, weaving a new fabric of understanding and unity in the town's history. John Bell, once an outsider, now stood among his neighbors, sharing smiles and handshakes. The ordeal had not only freed his family from the curse, but had also broken down barriers, bringing the people of Adams together in a shared experience of relief and awakening.
Children played freely in the streets, their laughter a testament to the town's newfound tranquility. The shadow of the witch had lifted, and with it, the fear that had once gripped their hearts. The local church, which had stood silent and empty, now opened its doors for a service of thanksgiving. People of all ages filled the pews, their voices joining in hymns of gratitude and hope. The message was clear. They had emerged from the darkness, stronger and more connected.
As the day drew to a close, the Bell family stood outside their home, looking at the sunset. They realized they had not only survived a haunting, but had also played a part in healing a wounded community.